Welcome back to the Trump Impeachment Trial review. I have now a new guest, Mike Porcelli. He's a radio talk show host, and he is a counterintelligence officer in the U.S. Army 50 years ago. So, Mike, I wanted to ask you what you think of this whole impeachment trial, especially since you're an independent.
I'm totally independent, and I think that this trial is the biggest disgrace that our government has ever put on in my lifetime.
Why is that?
Because it's totally unnecessary and improper. When Alan Dershowitz reprimands the Congress, the Democrats, for violating what impeachment was supposed to be as it was written into the Constitution, when Alan Dershowitz has to correct them and to instruct them that they're going about it all wrong, then that's proof enough for me, and I think should be for anybody else, that this whole process is unwarranted.
Alan Dershowitz is on Trump's side, though, so, that's...
He's never been a Trump supporter. He's really on the side of the Constitution. He's a man that puts the law above personal opinions, personal loyalty. He's acting in this case to defend the Constitution.
Well, as an independent, first of all, do you live in New York, or what part?
I was born in New York, lived here all my life, except for 2 years I was in the Army.
Okay.
And went to school here. I teach here.
So New York is a blue state, so do people, when they find out you're independent, do they ask your opinions of Trump? And then, you come off somewhat as a Trump supporter, so what will you say to that?
I say that I'm an American supporter, and if President Trump happens to be the person I feel is exercising the best American values and judgment and doing what's best for the country, then I support him.
What's the reason that you support him? I mean, there's so many arguments against him, and this quid pro quo talk, and that he has his own political future over the interests of American people. Why do you support him? What has he done to help the country?
You're right. There are so many arguments against him. Like he's a racist. He's anti-immigrant. He's anti-women. But there's no evidence of that. I know people that know him. I don't know him personally. I don't know his family. I met his son Donald Jr. once. Just briefly, so I don't really know them, but I know people that know him and his family, and everybody I know that does business, has done business with him in the past, has said he's a great guy to do business with. There are plenty of people that say he's not a good guy to do business with, but I'm told by my other friends that those are the people that didn't perform as they were expected to. So if you can't perform the job, you can't expect to get paid. Mm-hmm. And Trump seems to operate the same way I do. We work on what's performance. We judge performance.
So you're judging the economy, or what do you consider his accomplishments?
Everything. What he's done for the military.
And you're a veteran.
I'm a veteran, and previous presidents have not supported the military, no matter what they say they do. He really does support the military, not just with his words, but with his actions and with our money. He's put his money, our money, where his mouth is.
What specific actions would you say show that he supports the Army?
Look at the military budget. He's increased the military budget. He's put in place a lot of good military leaders. He's not afraid to take on the heat, for making a decision. He fires missiles when he thinks it's necessary to support this country's goals, and he had no problem taking out the leading terrorist in the world, and now everybody is supporting the terrorist. Not everybody, but the Democrats seem to be supporting the dead terrorist over our own troops.
So coming back to the impeachment trial, Trump's legal team is arguing that he did nothing wrong. Do you agree with that, or are you a little bit worried about?
I read the transcript. There's nothing in the transcript that says, "I won't give you the money unless you do something." The words are not in there. Mm-hmm. The people that say he's done a quid pro quo or he threatened, I heard a lot of people say he's threatened the president of Ukraine. There was no threat in either phone call, and he's not the kind of guy that throws threats around,
So do you think that his record and everything he's done is pretty much perfect or close to perfect, or?
Nobody's perfect, but he's probably done the best job of any president I've seen in recent years.
Wow, that's a big statement.
Look at the economy. He ran on boosting the economy. Mm-hmm. And people say he's created so many jobs. He hasn't created any jobs. He's created the environment where business can create jobs. The previous president created a climate where business wasn't so likely to create jobs.
So as an America supporter and someone who is at the moment supporting Trump, are you worried that this impeachment trial is going to have an impact on his electability for him to get reelected in the 2020 election? I mean, are you concerned? Are you going to go out and spread the word and your views to other people?
I give my views to anybody who asks, like you do. I'm not worried so much about his electability. I am concerned that this whole process, this bogus impeachment process, is hurting our standing in the world and his ability to negotiate with foreign leaders. I think we probably would have settled the Korea and China situations if he wasn't going through this impeachment fiasco. So it hurts the country overall in our standing in the world.
Mm-hmm. And as somebody, an American citizen and somebody who's paying taxes, do you think it's a huge waste of time and money? Does this outrage you, or you think that, hey, we should go through the impeachment trial and show Americans that, or our voters are going to show what they wanted at the end of the day anyway, and that we should go through it and just finish it off?
Well, now that it's started, it has to be finished. I think the right thing to do would be, once both sides present their cases, the judge should look at it and say there's no evidence here of any wrongdoing. So if this was a criminal trial, and I've been through 1,000 criminal trials as an expert witness, all the so-called evidence that I've seen presented so far is not evidence at all. It's just opinions, and emotions and opinions. That's all the Democrats have presented.
Well, let's go into your background as a counterintelligence officer, and I know this was, decades ago, but what did that experience and that work, what sort of perspective and what did you bring from that in analyzing this current situation?
The education I got in Army intelligence was priceless. It gave me the ability, the skill to analyze a situation and determine what are the true facts and make decisions based on only viewing the true facts, not emotion, not hyperbole, not any other kind of nonsense. Just drill down to what the true facts are, and then make a decision based on that.
Okay. Any thoughts on the trial right now and moments that you felt were either helping Trump or hurting him? I mean, what is your analysis of what we've seen so far?
I wasn't able to watch any of the Democrat presentation, the opening presentation.
That's funny.
It was just too stressful. But I was just really too busy to watch it. But I saw a lot of reporting done about it, and I didn't see any facts presented. The people that say he threatened the president of Ukraine, there was I saw no threats anywhere. The Republicans have so far presented, I think, a very good counter argument to whatever the Democrats started with. I think the best example for me is Alan Dershowitz, when he presented the way the writers of the Constitution, the way they envisioned impeachment working, and the way they warned against using it for political purposes. And this is totally a political presentation, what they're putting on now. When Alan Dershowitz says there was no wrongdoing, even if the president did give the Ukraine a quid pro quo, even if he did that, it's not impeachable.
Right, that's their main argument now. Mm-hmm.
So, I don't see that he did ask for a quid pro quo. He didn't use any threats. He did release the money, apparently within the same time frame as it was released to many other countries.
You're providing a lot of arguments pro-Trump, and no one can argue that the economy is good right now, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. But I mean, if the economy wasn't doing well and whatnot, do you think you'd be as supportive of Trump right now, or you think you'd be a little bit more, supportive of the impeachment trial and removal?
I think one has nothing to do with the other. Like I said, I judge people on performance. His performance on the economy has been exceptional. If it was just mediocre, then, most presidents' economies are mediocre. So we can't throw a president out just because he has a mediocre economy. As far as everything else he's done with the military, with taking out terrorists and not being afraid to take out a terrorist, previous presidents have had opportunities to take out presidents and refused to do it, mainly for political reasons. They were afraid they'd look bad. He's not afraid to look bad. And that's I think, what makes me have the most respect for him. He's not afraid to take chances, regardless of the consequences, if it's the right thing to do for the country.
Well, this is the third time that our country is going through an impeachment trial, and it's very divisive, and it's something that a lot of people didn't want to go into, and yet we're in it now. So what sort of lessons do you think that the country can take away from this? And now that it's ongoing, do you think it should be completed, or what do you think of where we're at right now?
Well, now that it's started, it has to reach some sort of conclusion, whether it's thrown out by the judges or it goes all the way through and then it leads to an acquittal. That's the only just conclusion that I can see, because it's all based on nothing. The two previous impeachments were based on crimes, or alleged crimes. In this one, there's no alleged crime. There's no crime. I mean, they're alleging that his actions were criminal, but they're not. And when Alan Dershowitz says there's no crime, there is no crime.
Okay. In terms of, how this is affecting the country, and do you talk to people who are Republicans or Democrats, and what are they saying about this? Are they watching it? I mean, if you watch the trial, it's very hard to listen to sometimes because it's just ongoing. It just keeps going, and then it's a little bit dry, right?
I've had many discussions with lots of people of all political persuasions, and when I talk to somebody who is on the opposite side regarding the president, when I point out the facts to them, and I say, well, if this fact is true, that nobody's ever heard him say a racist remark, why do you still think he's a racist? Because 99% of the media portrays him as a racist. So I think the biggest problem for the country right now is what he likes to call the fake news media. They're spewing propaganda on the airways and in print and online when there's no evidence to support the claims that they make against him.
So you don't think he's ever said anything racist?
No more than most people I know, and everybody can make a remark. There are jokes made about every ethnic group. That doesn't mean that you're anti that group.
Mm-hmm. So when he said, when he referred to African nations as S-hole countries, did that concern you at all, or no?
I believe it's not just African countries. There are a lot of below par countries on every continent.
Okay. Now when we go back to you talking to people, right, Democrats and Republicans, do you openly share your views, or do you sort of keep them to yourself? I mean, you're an independent, but you support Trump, so are you afraid to talk about that?
I don't go out and advertise my views, but if I'm in a discussion I'm on the radio a lot, on several radio shows, and if the discussion comes up that's political or regarding the government or the military, I'm happy to give my views. I'm not afraid to give my views. That's what's great about this country. Everybody can give their views, and you're free to have totally incorrect views. Hopefully, the people that have the incorrect views don't get to be in charge.
Can you remember a time that was as divisive as it is now, and it's as, saying something could bring as large consequences?
I've never seen the country so divisive, but I think that, and people blame the president for that. The media blames the president for that, but it's really the media's fault. I've never seen a case where somebody wearing a Make America Great Again hat attacked somebody from the other side. But you see plenty from the other side attacking people with MAGA hats.
There's, some people can't go eat at certain restaurants. It's definitely become pretty crazy at this point.
But I've never seen a Trump supporter ban somebody from a restaurant or try and boycott them or their business. That only goes one way. It's all anti-Trump and anti the people that support Trump. But the people that support Trump are really not anti-anybody as far as I can see. I know I'm not.
We're going to take a short break from the Trump impeachment trial, and we'll be back to talk with Mike for some more.
Thank you. You got a king?
Go fish. In your face, in your face.
It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Welcome back to the Trump impeachment trial review. I'm here with Mike Porcelli, who is talking about what it's like to be an independent and watching the Trump impeachment trials. So we left off talking about a little bit about why you think his legal team is correct. Wanted to see what points you thought, besides Alan Dershowitz, that are quite strong, and why America should side with the president.
I think Alan Dershowitz is probably one of the greatest legal scholars in this country at this time, and I don't think anybody disagrees with that opinion. And like I said before, when he points out all the errors in the Democrats' presentation, I think that's all we need to see. I'm anxious to see the question and answer period that's coming up.
Do you think that there should be witnesses and bring witnesses, or we don't need to go there?
I don't think there's any reason to go any further with this, because this whole trial was based on made up facts. There was no basis for the trial. Look, for example, at the recent what the FISA court recently said about the search warrants on Carter Page. I believe they threw out 2 of the search warrants as invalid. So everything that was, whatever came from the investigation, that surveillance of Carter Page, now has to be thrown out of court. I've been through 1,000 trials and testified in 1,000 trials, and I've never seen a case where if a trial was based on totally erroneous facts, the whole thing would be dismissed in an instant. So that's really what should happen here, but I'm not the legal scholar,
So going back to his phone call to the Ukraine's president, you don't think that was a quid pro quo?
I didn't hear anything that said, if you don't do this, I won't give you the money. He said, do us a favor, do us, the country, a favor, and let's find out where the money is going, I don't want my tax dollars going to corrupt countries to go in somebody's pocket. I want them going for the purpose that they were intended for, to support our foreign policy goals. And it's the president's job to make sure that the money is well spent. I mean, one of his main jobs, his primary job is to keep us safe, which I think he's doing very well. And his secondary job is to make sure our money is well spent. And if he would just turn over the money to any country without asking any questions, I don't think you want your tax dollars going down the drain for some illegitimate purpose, do you?
Well, I mean, no one does, I don't think.
Right.
But what possible government...
But then he gets condemned for asking the question, Let's make sure the money is well spent, which is really all he was trying to accomplish there, right?
What possible government interests would be in having investigations of Joe Biden? Do you really think Joe Biden could be corrupt, or?
I don't think he mentioned investigating Biden specifically or his son. I think he wanted just to determine if there was corruption involved in any of the money that we were giving to the country.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And
I wouldn't care who was corrupt. We want to root out all the corruption.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at this and the election coming up, do you think this could affect you know, do you think Joe Biden, for example, is benefiting from this impeachment trial, and Democratic candidates in general could be making some gains just from this happening?
I don't think anybody's benefiting from this on both sides. I don't think anybody benefits. You know, there's an old saying in legal proceedings: the only ones that benefited are lawyers.
Okay. Any highlights from the trial so far? I mean, it's been many days, but you know, when people think that, what do you think they're going to remember in this long process?
I think when it's all done, the primary memory is going to be it was a big waste of time and money, which I think it is. I've never seen a case where so many people can present as factual things that are totally erroneous.
Do you think Trump is going to come out stronger from this, or like you said, no one's going to benefit in the end? I mean, you can't erase this mark from his record.
I see a lot of his supporters really becoming stronger supporters because...
including you.
Including me, yeah. We don't like, in this country, we don't like to see people wrongly accused, do we? No matter who they are.
No, we don't.
And that's what's happening. He's wrongly accused. If he does something wrong, and if he would violate the Constitution in any way, then he should be prosecuted. But when Alan Dershowitz says there's no violation, how can anybody say there is? I mean, he's like the leading authority on the subject.
What do you think Trump should be doing at this time? Should he be just continuing to do his job, or should he comment on this? What's, you know?
Well, he's continuing to do his job. He's signing treaties. He's making all kinds of announcements every day, you know, on the work he's doing. He just announced a peace deal, a possible peace deal in the Middle East, which nobody's been able to accomplish. He's already accomplished things that other people have tried and nobody's been able to accomplish. I think he's just going to continue working, but he's handicapped now. Now he's got, because of this whole, not just this impeachment trial, but the whole 2-year Mueller investigation.
So it is affecting him, you think?
It's slowing him down, and it's tying his hands. Like I said, he could probably have settled many world issues much quicker if he didn't have all these distractions. The Mueller investigation was a big, bogus distraction. This is another distraction. I think that's all the Democrats are really trying to do, is distract him and keep him from accomplishing everything that he could possibly accomplish before the election. And then they can point to him and say, look, he didn't accomplish this or that.
If we could go back in time and you could advise Trump before the call in the summer with the president of Ukraine, would you tell him, hey, we shouldn't bring this topic up at all, or, you know, just let it be?
Well, that would imply that we're allowing our money to just be wasted, or possibly just be wasted on corrupt foreign officials.
So you think you don't take that back at all? You think you should have asked the question?
I think he should have asked the question. Maybe he could have asked it better. People complain about his language, the way he tweets, but I don't really see anything wrong with anything he says. Like I said, sometimes he could maybe word things a little better, but I don't really judge anybody by every word they say. You know, like I said, I look for performance, and so far I think his performance has been exceptional.
So you're ready for 4 more years of Trump?
Hopefully.
And do you think that if that happens, it's going to be, you know, another witch hunt or something like that? We've had the Mueller, we've had the impeachment. I mean, do you think Democrats have anything else to
I think for the country's long-term benefit, we need 4 more years of President Trump and a Republican Congress and Senate, so that they can't then continue to distract them.
Do you think that's going to happen? I mean, the country's so divided now, so retaking Congress might be difficult.
Well, like I said, I think the major cause for the division in the country is perpetrated by the press, the fake media. When they constantly claim that he's a racist, he's anti-woman, he's anti-immigrant, the man's not anti-immigrant. He just wants people to come in the proper way. You know, I know plenty of people that came to this country legally. My wife came here legally. Her whole family came here legally. And they don't appreciate other people just sneaking across the border and getting all kinds of benefits, from taxpayers.
Do you think you said he's the greatest president we've ever had, right?
In my lifetime, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you want to see him accomplish then if he gets 4 more years?
Secure the borders.
Right, he still hasn't done that. That was his biggest campaign promise, and
Right.
it hasn't happened.
And he's been stymied by all the obstructions, all the court challenges, and he wins every court challenge, but they slow him down. He probably could have built 10 times the amount of border wall if he didn't have all the distractions and the delays caused by, court challenges that turn out to be bogus.
Well, if we build the border wall, there's a lot of, there currently have a lot of immigrants who are doing some of the labor here in America. So, I mean, that could affect our economy as well. What do you think about that?
We need to bring in as many outside workers as the economy needs. We don't need to bring in more than the economy needs, and everybody that we do bring in has to be vetted and brought in a proper fashion. I'm all for bringing in as many immigrants as the economy needs. We just want them all to come in and sign the guest book. And if they have anything in their background that makes them unsuitable to come into this country, then we shouldn't let them in. Should we let terrorists in? I don't think anybody wants that.
Any final thoughts on the impeachment trial?
I just wish the press would be a fair-minded press. One of the greatest things about this country is a free press. Right now, we don't have a free press. We have the propaganda press.
That's a very Trump thing to say.
Well, it's the way I see it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us for the Trump Impeachment Trial review. Hopefully, we'll have you next time to continue this conversation. Welcome back to the Trump Impeachment Trial review. As you all should probably know by now, Trump was acquitted of the impeachment articles, and now we're looking as a nation into what's going to happen next. And today I have Xavier Basabe with me. He's a consultant with Congress of Racial Equality, and we're going to talk about what exactly happened with this huge trial that, was the focus of our nation for so long.
Oh, happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Well, Xavier, was wondering if you think we should have gotten into this in the first place, because everyone knew that we had a Republican-led Senate. So, if Trump got impeached, we knew it was going to get to this point where, Republicans had control, and, a lot of people guessed that this was going to happen, that he was going to be acquitted. So what do you think about this?
Right. At first, I did believe that it's something that we shouldn't have got into, but in hindsight, I think it was good that we actually did go through with it. Even though the hardcore Trump supporters are not going to care what he did,
they actually may be supporting him even more now.
Absolutely, and I think it made him stronger in some ways.
You think so?
But I think to the undecided or to the general public, it'll basically show the Republicans how they stood by him regardless of any wrongdoing, and I think it's more of an indictment on the Republicans in the Senate, and even though as I said, I think in some ways this made him stronger. I think his supporters have rallied around him, and it's going to be tougher now to defeat him.
So when all this was happening, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was deciding whether she was going to bring this forward, I mean, you were thinking that we shouldn't do this, that the nation shouldn't go through the impeachment trial?
Well, in my opinion, I think the Democrats should have brought him up on different charges, something
Really?
that was
Which ones do you
stronger.
think?
Well, there's a few of them. I think there's good evidence that he was involved in some money laundering, some activities. Before he actually became president, and as president, I think there have been a few impeachable offenses. One is the violation of the emolument clauses.
Right, people have been talking about this since the very beginning, even before he was sworn in. Yeah.
And I think I think it would have been something that would have had more meat on the bones. This seemed like such a it's something that I think most of the American people did not care about this particular offense.
You mean the Ukraine call specifically?
Yes, right.
Right. I mean, there was a transcript out there about it, and a lot of people were thinking, or he said it was for the interest of the country, not just his political future. So, one thing about Trump is that he always goes with whatever he believes, it seems like, and then he goes, even something may sound crazy, he still goes for it. And do you think the Democrats were too conservative in the articles that they chose then?
Well, I believe so, yeah. I think this is something that the Republicans actually were very successful in painting this as, yes, he did something wrong, but it's not an impeachable offense that should have been, merited something throwing him out of office.
And that's something that Harvard professor Alan Dershowitz was saying too.
Yes.
And a lot of people obviously take his word as something that's, very important. So,
Yes.
So in terms of this making Trump stronger, you mentioned it has made him stronger. And do you think that has made him much stronger or just a little bit? I mean, how much has this helped him?
It's hard to really gauge it. I think I believe it did make him stronger. I think he sort of successfully turned it on its head and made it seem like this was, and I believe so. I think it's very strongly that this seems like an attempt by the Democrats to actually remove him from office on political means, as opposed to something that was an actual crime.
And you're a Democrat, so for you to say that is
absolutely.
pretty powerful.
Yes, yeah. I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter, and I really believe that this was. I think it's just a big mistake in just choosing this particular offense to bring the impeachment charges on.
And do you think Trump has pretty much taken a lot of attacks from Democrats? It's been the Russia investigation and Mueller report, and then the impeachment. So do you think that the Democrats at this point, with an election coming up, have something else they're going to try to get him at if he does something else, or do you think this is sort of we should just leave him at that and just let him do what he's doing?
Yeah, I think there's been talk of actually bringing impeachment charges, again. So,
on the things you mentioned.
Yeah,
Okay.
some other. I mean, I think there was talk about especially the way that he handled the Vindman and what was the other gentleman's name? The ambassador, Sunderland, right? So I think this is like sort of like an intimidation type, move, and but like I said, I don't think they will do it, but it's possible,
And would you like to see them do it, or we've gone through a lot already?
Yeah, at this point, no.
No?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think they should just let the election play out since we're so close to it. So.
Right. So after all this is said and done, do you think Trump won, or it seems like he won, right?
I think so. Yeah. Unfortunately, it looks like a win for him.
Yeah. Okay. And Biden is was obviously involved in this, not because he did something, but because Trump asked Ukraine to look into Biden for past corruption or whatnot. So his campaign, I mean, things have turned a lot for him too. He started off as the front runner in the 2020 election, and now he's came in fourth in the primary.
Yes.
And I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it seems like things that Trump does, it helps him, and then all of a sudden it has a side effect of Biden. So what do you think is going to happen to Biden? I mean, do you think this is actually what hurt him in the election, or is it just when it was just going to happen anyway?
Yeah, I think it was going to be tough for him anyway. I don't think.
And you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, so
yes, right,
you're a little bit biased.
But I'm trying to be objective, and I think that there's an appetite for moderate to win the Democratic nomination.
And I totally agree with that.
Yeah, but I think Biden seems to be viewed as being out of touch a little bit, and I actually think the impeachment and the sort of like that aspect of corruption that was raised with him and his son, I think that played a part. I mean, in my mind, I think most Democrats, sure, I think most people, this doesn't look that that good for him. I think nobody really believes that he didn't really have a was not involved, and that's not and it's the reason that his son did hold these positions,
Right.
being Biden's son.
So, I mean, the fact that Trump actually brought up Biden in the call, I mean, it seems
Yeah,
like it ended
yeah.
up damaging him anyway, right?
Right,
That's
right.
pretty big.
Yeah.
What do you think about, in terms of Trump's future? I mean, do you think that he's going to win the election? Do you think that this whole impeachment thing helped him, or
Well,
what do you think?
Well, we'll see. I think that it's going to be closer than I believed. At least a year ago, I actually thought that this would be something that I think Trump would lose. And now I'm not so sure. It all depends on who's going to be the eventual Democratic nominee. I believe that of all of them, Bernie Sanders has the best chance of beating him. Even the reason I say that is because I think there is the country, a populist would have a more effect. I think Trump won because of that. He promised that he would do more for Middle America.
And do you think he's done things for Middle
Actually,
America?
not really.
No.
I don't really think. I think he sort of conned these people, and even though they still believe in him, I don't think he's done as much for them as they think he has.
Well, I mean, I think one of the biggest concerns that Americans have, especially the middle class, is the economy. And, a lot of the times the middle class is the one that ends up suffering the most. It's not the rich or the super poor. So with the economy going well, I mean, do you think that that's been something that Trump has helped the middle class with, or it's just all an aftermath of Obama's administration?
Right. I think the economy is strong regardless of Trump. This was something that already was on the upswing during the Obama administration, that is carried over, and this is really what's really helped them, because if we were going through tough times, then it would be a different story.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I think there would be,
If it was like
less
a
support for him, obviously.
2008 climate,
Right.
I think Trump would have a tough time getting reelected.
And you mentioned that you think that people, Americans want a moderate Democratic candidate, right? But I mean, Bernie Sanders is like progressive. So what
Right.
are your thoughts on that?
Oh no, I think. Well, I mean, to the general electorate, I think they will be more towards a progressive.
You think so?
Yeah, I think most of if you sort of in polling, most of the policies that Bernie Sanders backed, it's actually very popular. I think people definitely want healthcare reform. They definitely want action on the environment. So I think many of once Bernie Sanders gets on the stump, and you actually get to see the contrast between him and his policies and Trump, I think he should do very well. Yeah.
And we know that Pete Buttigieg did very well in the primary, and
Right.
he's a moderate. He's seen as, younger, more energetic version. Not really a version of Biden, but you know what I mean. He's also moderate. So does that worry you? I mean, I think people, in general, it seems like, or at least from what I've seen, it seems like people want a moderate Democratic candidate.
Right. Yeah, I think he's definitely gaining momentum, and I think it's because he is sort of like an Obama type figure, moderate, but I think he has a wider appeal. But as far as when going against Trump, I think the contrast is going to be in favor of Trump.
You mean in terms of Buttigieg and Trump?
I think so, yes.
And you think Bernie is the only one that can really?
Yeah, 'cause I think Bernie has more of like a passionate following.
And I think we need to have a huge following, because look at Trump's following, right? I mean, they
Absolutely,
followed
right.
him through everything, the
Yeah.
Mueller investigation, impeachment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Trump basically is having he has a cult of personality, and I mean, he was in people's living rooms for years, so I think that's what has really helped him, and has what has gotten, the support he has.
And do you think the impeachment, has scarred the nation, or,
No, not at all. I don't think. I think that, as I mentioned, it's something that really, in a way, has helped Trump. he's able to paint it as, sort of like a political vendetta. And I think in the long run, I don't think it's going to, people forget about it. I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to, have a long-lasting effect.
So, I mean, it actually went on for about 134 days or whatnot. I mean, it's quite a long time, and I think a lot of people weren't really watching it every day because it was quite dry, right? I mean, if you were just watching.
Yeah, and I didn't really, because I basically knew what was going to happen,
You knew that the Senate was going to quit him?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if also they were successful in keeping the witnesses away, because I think John Bolton would have been very damaging to Trump. So.
But even if he had testified, do you think it would have been a different result or not?
I think so.
Really?
I think from what it seems he has to say, I think it probably would have had more damaging. Yeah,
Okay.
especially also left partners
Right.
has some really bad. He has recordings and strong eyewitness testimony against Trump. So.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back to talk more about Trump's impeachment trial and how it ended. Welcome back to the Trump Impeachment Trial review. We are unpacking what happened with this trial, in which President Donald Trump was acquitted of 2 articles, which were abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. I'm here with Xavier Basabe. He's a consultant with Congress of Racial Equality, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about what you do with CORE, and what makes you interested in politics, and talk about Trump in that light.
Okay. Well, Congress of Racial Equality is it's a civil rights organization that right now we're more, it's a more conservative organization, and
When you say conservative, you mean like mostly Republican, or not really that?
yes, the head of CORE is Nigel Innes, the son of the late Roy Innes. He's a Republican, but anybody, I'm a Democrat.
And you're Democrat, so I was going to wonder, like, why did they hire you, or why did you want to work for them?
I think he's more interested in just the policy view, and we don't push, a conservative agenda.
Okay,
but
and it's good that it's
more-
diverse then, with different political
Absolutely,
views.
right. So we're looking more for a diversity of racial diversity and political views.
Let's talk a little bit about Mitt Romney. The senator was the only one in the history of our country to vote vote against basically the president who was in his own party. What do you think about what he did? And obviously now he's playing it off as it's not damaging him, or the view that colleagues have about him. But what do you think about that vote? I mean, was it making a statement, or?
I think well, from the beginning, I think Romney has been in opposition to Trump.
Right.
Even though he, at one time, I think he was trying to get a position in the Trump administration. But I think Romney is I don't view it as much of a brave as some people view it. I don't think it's such a brave stance, because I think the wing of the Republican Party that he represents is one that they're not really they don't like the way Trump, his character and the way he acts. But it was good to see it because just like John McCain, he's somebody who
He
was
always
very
was
opinionated.
clashing with Trump. And we don't have that many more. I think with the impeachment trial, it kind of showed that, especially with his acquittal speech, when he thanked everyone who backed him, and then he started bashing his enemies and people who didn't stick by him. I mean, it seems like if you're a Republican, he's got pretty stronghold, pretty strong hold on him. And so now, the statement that he's making that Republicans have to stand by him. I mean, do you think that's threatening our democracy at all, or threatening?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think I think there are more Republicans who think like Romney, but are very afraid of the
To actually go out and say it.
exactly. I think they're afraid for their own political careers, to go against Trump, and it definitely is something that is very that's very damaging to our democracy. To have somebody like that has sort of like a mob, behind them that could put you out of office, And
Well, what do you think about, with obviously we think this is a threat to democracy. So is it something that is there anything that can be done about it, or basically we just have to wait for him to not get elected in 2020, or maybe in 4 years after that? What do you think?
Right, exactly. I mean, that's we live in a country where that is our recourse is to vote him out, and hopefully that we'll see how the election plays out, and if it doesn't, then I don't know. I think he will be emboldened, in a second term. I hate to think how he's going to act from now on. So this is something that concerns me. If he is reelected.
Let's talk a little bit about Bernie Sanders. Then you mentioned that you were supporting him. Did you support Bernie Sanders all the way from the start, or were you, Elizabeth Warren or Biden at some point?
Yeah, I've been a Bernie supporter since 2016.
Okay.
I attended rallies, and I actually did a little volunteering for his campaign in 2016.
So when this election cycle came around, you were immediately a Bernie fan. You never were an
Right.
Elizabeth Warren fan, supporter or anything like that?
Well, I mean, if Bernie Sanders wouldn't have been the nominee, I definitely would go with Elizabeth Warren. She would be my second choice.
Okay.
But the reason I actually think that if Bernie Sanders would have beat Hillary Clinton, I think he would have won over Trump.
Well, I also think that, first of all, with what that happened with the nominee at that point, that was another story, right? But I think Bernie had a lot of supporters, and, the Democrats have themselves to blame for what happened with the 2016 election, I think, and how we got here to this point.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of fear, about Bernie. People protecting, the elite are protecting their interests, and if we go after socialists in other countries, imagine allowing a socialist to be elected in our country. So unfortunately, he's going to have a lot of opposition going against him. So.
But you mentioned also that Bernie has a following, but I don't know if this following is bigger than Trump's following. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, just honestly, do you think the size of his following even compares to the Trump supporters?
Absolutely, I agree with you. I think actually in 2016, his following was more. He had a stronger following in 2016 than he does
Because
now.
now the Democratic Party, there were so many candidates in the pool, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now it's sort of like whittling down, but I mean, when you have so many candidates, you just kind of get split the amount of support that each person has.
Yeah. So I don't know how much of those people are going to rally behind Sanders if he ends up being the eventual nominee.
So are you a bit worried that he may not have as many supporters as Trump, especially after this whole impeachment thing, where he gained more, maybe not more supporters, but a bigger, more passionate following from the people he has, right?
Right, exactly. I think Trump, right now has a very passionate support. I mean, his base, is like he mentioned one time, he could choose somebody on Fifth Avenue and that, he'd get away with it.
Right, and he said something else about, if he did something to his grandmother or something, people would still be okay with it, or someone said that.
Yeah, so, I'm afraid that's going to be, a big factor in the election.
And, as a Democrat and as a Bernie supporter, do you feel angry at all? Or I wouldn't say angry, but how do you feel about the fact that, Trump was elected and there's still some debate whether he won the election fairly or not, right? I mean, some people think that there was Russian interference or whatnot, but
Right.
I mean, the fact is that he was elected, right? And he's undone a lot of Obama's policies. So what does that make you think as a Democrat? I mean, the country seems more divided than it's ever been. But I mean, is this the reality of America? Is America basically, Donald Trump? That's the majority, right? I
Right,
mean,
right.
do you think that that's the reality of our country, or what's
Yeah.
happening here?
Yeah, yeah. I think I come to that realization, and it's something that saddens me that um, it's a mirror of ourselves, of the country, that we actually did elect somebody like Trump, that he was able to sort of, I think in a way, he hoodwinked his way into office.
But it still happened, and no matter whatever way he did it, he's still an elected president.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, and he was able to play on the a lot of the prejudices and fears, of the country, and unfortunately, that again, that's sort of like a reflection on us. It's not, something that you say, oh well, Trump this and Trump that, but he has a lot of support, and that speaks more about his supporters than it does about him.
Well, with the 2016 election, a lot of people started saying that there was Russian interference and that, maybe he didn't really win the election, or it's unclear whether he really won the election because it was, close with Hillary Clinton. But with this whole impeachment trial we went through and the acquittal, I mean, do you think this sort of like actually supports or like backs up that he really won and that he really is like the most favored person to lead our country? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean that's something we never really got to the bottom of, whether there was Russian interference. I mean
Even with the Mueller
we know
report and
there was,
everything.
but I mean that to the extent, what extent there was.
True, yeah, we don't know.
How did they influence it? I think the way I think the interference is, there's a lot of sort of like a lot of the things that are posted that are more very divisive, and I think that's something that I think are being exploited by. I don't know if it's by Russia, but I mean it's something that the division is being really exploited to Trump's advantage.
What are your thoughts between now and the election? Obviously, the impeachment's wrapped up now. What should Democrats be doing right now? Should they just be focused on policies and trying to pass things that Americans want? I mean, we're facing a lot of issues, right? Housing shortages. I mean, the economy's good, but there are so many other issues that we're facing. I mean, should Democrats really just start focusing, like Trump said, on like getting things done and working on legislation, or are there, you earlier mentioned that there's other articles of impeachment that you think are stronger, like emoluments and whatnot. I mean, should Democrats be focused on attacking Trump or just let him win this one and, work on policies?
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be a little of both. We, definitely they should still keep attacking and sort of calling him out on things he does. But also we should focus um, on clarifying what we could do for America, what Democrats could do, running this country.
And I totally agree with you on that. I think that, the best way to win support of Americans is just to do something that is going to help them, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Xavier, and thank you for tuning in to the Trump Impeachment Trial review. We really enjoyed talking about this, and we'll be back for more politics talk soon.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.